Okay, hello everybody. Let's get started on this. What we're gonna do is we're gonna open up Adobe Photoshop. Okay, so the way we do that is you go to your applications and you open up the PS, which stands for Photoshop, and you're gonna see a window that looks similar to this one. However, this one has all my jobs and stuff that I've been opening up recently. So as you create files, you're going to see multiple uh, files that you've recently worked on. Okay? So, and that's because this is selected right here, recent. But what we're going to do is create a new file. So guess what? We're going to press this button that says create new. And I just clicked it. So we get a new document window set up here, and we're going to start with this one that says 11 by 8.5. We normally call it an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, and you're going to see right here is going to be a title that you can name this file. Let's call it Test 1. I like that name. And as I look down, it says that my width is 11 inches and my height is 8.5 inches. It's got an orientation here, and you can switch that whether it's this way or this way. Resolution is going to be how many dots per inch you got. So a great printing resolution is 300 dpi, which is what we currently have. And then RGB color mode, that's fantastic. You can also switch to grayscale and CMYK and other things, but let's stay in RGB. Background, white. I like white, but it could be black or it could be any other color you choose. So let's start with white. Now that we have all those selected, let's go ahead and hit create. And that's going to put us into a window that looks like this. So this is your canvas, okay? All this whiteness is your canvas, okay? So this is everything that's going to be on your document, everything here in white. So let's start right off the bat by throwing a couple images in here. So how do we get an image from our computer onto Photoshop? Well, I like super easy way is just save an image onto your desktop and then drag it onto this white area. So I'm going to just grab, I have a bunch of, I always have hundreds of things on my desktop. I'm terrible at it, but so I'm going to just drag this on. This is something that I worked on recently, a logo design. I'll drag this on. This is a picture of a cute puppy. That's our new puppy. That's Scooter. And we'll drag on maybe a banner design that I did recently. So now we have 3 things here. And as you can see, on the right-hand column, these are all listed here, these things, okay? And you can switch these around by dragging them. Now Scooter's on the top. We can select this layer over here, which is the bottom layer, and move it to the top. And as you can see, I can left click and drag these on top of each other or not. Okay? So we got this Metals Direct image. Anything on the top is closer to your eyes. Okay? Anything on the bottom is further away. So I can make this layer visible or not visible by hitting this eye icon. So Scooter will disappear back there. This hamburger logo will disappear if I do this. I'm clicking it on and off. And your foreground element, which is your Metals Direct thing, comes and goes. So whatever is light gray is the layer you're selected. Okay, so for example, if I wanted to select Metals Direct, I'm going to pick this layer right here. and I can use my move tool, which is this tool right here, to move it around. Okay. If you have this up here, which is called the Show Transform Controls, if you have that selected, it'll create this bounding box, and you'll see little arrows, and I can make this bigger or smaller. If I hold Shift, I can scale it proportionally. Okay, and I can hit Enter when I like where it's at. So same thing with this hamburger logo. I can scale it, and the reason why is I'm holding the left button and Shift if I want it to scale proportionally, and I'm just, see how that icon kind of changes? There's like a rotation version. Okay, if I hold Shift, it'll go to the nearest like 90 degree, or the nearest angle, nearest 5, I think, yeah, degrees. Okay, and then if you hover over this corner here, you see it's changing from a curve to like these diagonal angles, arrows. Okay, so that's how you shrink and enlarge an image. And the way that's able to happen is you have to have up here at the top Show Transform Controls. You have to have that checked. If it's not checked, it'll just look like this. Okay? And there's nothing around it. But I like to have it checked. So Scooter, let's go back to Scooter. I just selected his layer. And let's make Scooter a little smaller as well. Okay? And I like where that's at. Okay? So, but let's say I wanted Scooter to be the first image closest to the viewer. Now I just dragged him up. What I did was I left clicked on this layer and I dragged it all the way up and I let go. Okay, so that's how we get images into Photoshop, and with that knowledge right there, you're ready to rock and roll. Okay, so let's say I wanted to paint on one of these images, and let's say I wanted to paint on Scooter. So I'll grab this little paintbrush icon, which is called the brush tool. Okay, and as I hover over it, it'll kind of tell you what that tool does. You see that? Okay, so I'm going to select that, and I see that there's a circle with a cross through it on mine. See how that's because it's not rasterized yet, which means turning it into a bunch of pixels. If I left click to paint, this warning window will come up. And what it says is this smart object must be rasterized before proceeding. Edit contents will no longer be available. Rasterize this smart object, question mark? Yes, we do want to. So let's hit OK. Now when I paint, it goes on there. But it's only affecting this layer. So, for example, I can take the eye off and all my paint work and my picture of Scooter is gone. So let's say I wanted to paint on the Metals Direct banner layer. Okay? I'm going to select that layer and it turns light gray. See that? Now everything I do to this layer is only going to be affected on that particular layer. Again, I used the paintbrush tool and I went to go paint and this icon comes up. I don't know why I call it an icon, but it's actually a little warning window. And I hit OK. Now I can paint just on that layer. Alright? So if I make Scooter and Metals Direct invisible, I see that my hamburgers logo is unaffected. Let's go back to our Move tool. I'm selecting the Move tool, and as you can see, Metals Direct layer is selected, and only the paintwork I did on that layer and the banner will move. So this is the power of Photoshop, is that you can get hundreds of layers going in, and you can manipulate layers individually. Okay, so I want you to imagine it as layers of glass. Okay, got layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, layer 4, and you can mess with the layers without affecting all the other layers. The reason why that would be really important is, well, you can imagine if you're painting like a sphere, you could start with a circle, then you could do some shadowing, and then you could do some highlighting. You could keep them all on separate layers. In fact, to illustrate that idea, let me do it. So to create a new layer, down here at the bottom, it's going to have a little, it looks like a page. This little logo looks like a page. And it says create a new layer. I'm going to click that. Now a new layer has come up right here. It's called layer 1. Okay? So I can draw on this layer and it's just like a clear piece of glass. So let's say I want to do a circle. I can go to this elliptical marquee tool, which is right under your move tool, and I can hold shift and pull out a perfect circle, or I can let go of shift and do a ellipse. But I like to do a circle right now, so let's do a circle. And let's take our paint bucket tool, which is right here. It's spilling paint is what it looks like, and it shows me that I can click that, left click inside our selection of a circle, and now it's filled it. You see these little dancing ant-like creatures? This little selection? That, you can mess with this as much as you want. Taking different colors. For example, let's click this little set foreground color right here. This is how you change the colors. Let's do like a different color pink. And I can mess with it as much as I want, and it won't go outside of that selection because I have these little dancing ants. Okay, let's try a different color. Okay, see? So it's a selecting just an area that you can edit. Okay? So if I wanted to get rid of that selection area, I can go to Select, Deselect, and that will deselect it, and now I can paint affecting the entire area. Does that make sense? I'm going to hit undo by going to Edit, Step Backwards. But since I'm super fancy, I'm just going to use my Control Z. Control Z. And that goes back one step. Okay? So, you have one layer, and it's this circle that we painted. Let's do another clear layer. Let's go down to Layer, and let's add a highlight. Let's say I wanted pretty much white. Okay? And let's say I wanted to just paint some white right there. And let's do a shadow layer. And let's say we used a darker pink. Let's say this is like a shadow. Okay? But you know what? I think I want that selection back. So what I can do is select, I can click on the area that I wanted that selection back, and I can click in this white zone, and when I paint, it's going to go on the outside of it instead of on the circle. But I don't want that. I want the opposite. I want it to paint on the inside. So what I'm going to do is go to Select Inverse. Now when I paint, it'll be just on the interior of the circle. So I can do a shadow like this. That shadow looks a little weird, so maybe I want to make my brush a little bigger. I can right click, and this will make my brush smaller, or it'll make my brush bigger. Do you see how now my circle's smaller? And if I make it bigger, now my circle's bigger. This also will do the hardness and softness of the edge of that brush. Okay, I want it real soft, so it's going to be at 0. And that looks good to me. Okay, so now when I paint on here, it's going to look like that. Okay, now I just hit deselect, which is right here. Deselect. And you have this sphere looking thing, right? And so what we did is we have our base layer here. Let's call this base. And we have our highlight. Let's call this highlight. And this can be a background layer. Now, how am I titling these? If you stay real organized, you can get a nice. What you do is you double click the word, and then it'll turn blue, and then you can name it anything you want. So let's say I want my background to be. Let's say I want my background to be like a grayish color, okay? And there's my background. Or better yet, let's do like make it look like a ball that's just sitting here, like a drop shadow. And again, I can double click my swatch and make it a little darker maybe if I wanted. Boom. Okay. Now this isn't an art class. This is just about using Photoshop and editing images. So you can see we have our background layer, on, off, on, off. You can see we have our base layer, boom, 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 boom. And then you see you have our highlights, boom, 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 boom. Okay? And we still have all our other garbage that we put on here before. So that gives you a good idea of how layers work. Okay? So, next thing I want to do is just a quick overview of the tools that we have inside of Photoshop. So we've learned about the Move tool. That is for moving things. You know, we went over that. We have the Ellipse tool. That is for creating ellipses and drawing within them or on the outside of them. Remember, if you want to draw on the outside of this ellipse, all you do is you go to Select and Inverse, and you're ready to rock and roll on the outside of it. Okay? If you want to draw on the inside, you hit Inverse again and it'll draw on the inside. Good? Okay, Clone Stamp Tool. This is a real fun one. Again, all these brushes, you can right click and feel the options that it has, see the options that it has. So let's say I wanted to clone something. Let me find something that's more clone worthy. Okay, let me bring in Scooter, I just dragged this off the desktop. So I got a Scooter image here, and I want to clone this. I'm going to rasterize it. I want to clone this little section. You can click on this little page icon too to put it on its own layer, but let's not do on its own like document. I don't want to confuse you though. So I got Scooter, I got this layer. Let's rasterize it real quick by clicking, let's say a paintbrush on it, and that'll rasterize it. Now let's go to our clone tool. We have our clone tool. Let's show you what the clone tool does. If you press Option or Alt, and then left click on his face, I can draw his face again over here. So it's just cloning an area. Okay? See that? Now we have two Scooters. So that's how that works. Okay? And again, how I did that is I pressed Alt or Option, and then I left click on my mouse to record the area that I'd like to duplicate. Then I go to that area, and it shows me what it's going to look like. And if I hit left button on the mouse, it'll actually paint it down. Pretty cool stuff. I love the clone tool. So, how would you use the clone tool? maybe to get rid of blemishes, maybe to erase a car on a street, maybe to add more clouds into a sky, or maybe add another moon and make a world look more sci-fi. I don't know. It's up to you how you want to use this clone tool. So again, Alt, it'll record an area, and then left click to paint that area in there. And we're just cloning up this place. So that's how the clone tool works. Now, let's go to, I want to really stick on the brushes that are used a lot. So, you know, history brush restores parts of an image to an earlier state. But let's move on to eraser tool. Okay, so the eraser tool looks like an eraser, and it changes pixels to the background color or makes them transparent. So if I want to erase this area, I can do so. But look it's not erasing it completely. Why not? Well, that's because there's something up here called opacity, and that is how much it's erasing. It's only erasing at 17%. So imagine you're holding an eraser and you're only pressing down at 17% of your full power. Well, let's crank it up to 100%. Now I'm erasing at my full power. Okay, so it's completely erasing it. This is actually used a lot, this opacity. If I want to go at 50%, it'll erase it only at 50%. If I go over it again, it's another 50%. And again, it's another 50%. Okay? So just note, you don't have to erase at 100% like I am right now. You have some options. And again, just like the paintbrush tool, I can right click and make this brush bigger. Okay, it's bigger. Or if you want to get mega fancy, you can use all these options for shapes, and that'll erase it in that brush shape. See, that's a different shape. So let's go to the paint bucket tool, which we talked about a little bit earlier. I'm going to select the paint bucket tool, and I'm going to just click in this area right here. Okay, so that made it all gray. Whatever color this swatch is right here, for now it's gray, but let's make it bright pink, is what color the paint bucket tool will create. Okay, so I can, and if you want to do an area really well, you can make a selection and do it into that selection using our elliptical marquee tool. But I want to show you the polygon lasso, because these paint buckets are pretty self-explanatory, but you're usually going to be using it in association with these two. So the elliptical tool, which goes like that, and then we can paint bucket, or the polygon lasso, which does the same thing, only straight lines. Now I take the paint bucket and I can fill it. Again, I can do Control D or deselect under the select menu to get rid of the little dancing ants. If I hold down on this, it gives me like a couple different lassos, right? This one is more organic. I can draw with my mouse. Okay, so I just filled that. Okay, and then this other one, well, let me hold down on that. It has a magnetic lasso. So what that does is, this doesn't always work great, but I want to show you how it works, is if I come next to an object, it'll kind of magnetically go to the hard edge there, right? You see that? Ooh, that didn't go very well. So let's try that again. So if I magnetically draw it out, I have to complete my circle until I get this circle icon that just popped up. There's a little tiny circle icon next to my magnetic thing. And look at that. It just did that area for me. Now I can fill that in with pink. It doesn't do it perfect. You might have to mess with the settings a little, which is the tolerance up here, whether it's super magnetic or not as magnetic. Okay? So So each of these default things are going to give you kind of a middle of the road setting. But what about this tool? This tool is called the blur tool, and it does just what it says it does. Pretty much all these do. Let's say I wanted to blur the area of this dog right here. Blur, 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 blur. I'm clicking several times. I just clicked about 100 times just now. I'm going to take my magnifying glass, which is this little dude right here at the bottom, and if I left click, I can zoom in. Do you see how blurry that skin is right there, or that fur is right there, compared to the old fur? So that was the blur tool doing its blurry action. Again, if I hold down, I got a couple options. If I left click hold down on the blur tool, I got a couple options. Okay, so I just clicked this smudge tool, and they got a great icon. It's like when you smudge your finger across your lead pencil drawing. It does the same thing. Okay, look at that. It smudges it. Okay, see that? Okay, yep, pretty cool. That one's a fun one. Okay, and if I left click hold down again in the same area, I can get the sharpen tool, and what that will do is sharpen up the it's not as noticeable, but as you can see, it sharpens it up. Now I've sharpened it so much to where it's really screwed up. But if something was a little not as tight as you'd like it to be, that might help you out here. So you can do it. Use that with caution. What do we got here? The dodge tool. So the dodge tool is fun. Let's get a new image and look at the dodge tool. Now I got a backup for you. Let me back up a little bit. You got to use this magnifying glass, and if you hit what is it, Alt? Yeah, Alt. It'll back it up. If you just click it, it'll go in. So the alternative is to go out. So I'm going to hit Alt and click the button. And if you get off your page like this, you can hit spacebar and it'll make this hand. Spacebar, and that'll kind of move around your whole canvas, everything. It's not moving layers, it's just moving your canvas. It's like picking up a piece of paper or picking up your canvas and just moving it around on your desk. So I think I've kind of destroyed that image quite a bit, so I want to bring in a new one just to mess with. This is an ad I did for Waterworks Park, or at least halfway through the ad. We were going to talk about the blur tool, or the dodge tool, I'm sorry. So let's see what the dodge tool does. Now it's rasterized, and so we got to rasterize it, and the fastest way I do that is I grab the brush tool or the eraser tool, and I just click once. Okay, so I'm going to go to the dodge tool here. Lightens areas in an image. Okay, so let's see what that does. Let's see. It lightens areas in an image. So this lady is getting lightened up, and maybe that's my daughter's face right there, so that's getting lightened up. And so as you can see, that's how that works. Okay, so it lightens it up. Burn tool. Let's get this a little bigger. That really kind of just like darkens things. Let's say that kind of just like takes the hues and darkens them up. So we've lightened up a couple faces, we've darkened up one. I'm going to undo it. So that's how that works. The sponge tool. See that? It has an effect. So you got to mess with these things. If you hold down, you can probably get a couple more options out of these. So remember, if you don't see what you're looking for, let's say I was looking for the polygon tool, the lasso tool, I may not see it right here, but I know that it is a selection tool, so I can hold down and I see there's these other options. So remember guys, there's a couple options within some of these tool options. Alright, pen tool is for doing paths. This one really takes some practice to kind of get used to what in the heck it does as far as drawing perfect shapes. But you can make really perfect shapes with that one, and I'll do a demo on that later as well. I'm going to undo all that. I want to do a demo on that pen tool because there's a lot you can do with that, and I'll do that separately. So what we've done now is we've clicked the letter T. And let's get rid of Waterworks Park image, and let's just go on a new layer. And how do we do that, folks? We hover down here to the Create New Layer button, and I've just left clicked onto my canvas, and I can type out some words. So if that didn't make sense, I'm going to do it again for you. I have a layer. You actually don't need to create a layer for this because it'll create its own layer. So I'm going to click the T if I want to type something. I'm going to left click on the canvas and type it out. I can go to the Move tool and click that. And now I have this bounding box because my Show Transform controls is on. And I can make it bigger or smaller or taller or all that. So if I grab these nodes, I can adjust the size. If I just grab in the where there's no node, I can just move the entire word. So be advised, these nodes will do certain things. So that is to make it like I can hit scale by holding shift, or I can distort it by grabbing this corner. If I only want it to go wider, I'd grab this node. Okay, so that won't mess with the height. Opposite of this one will only mess with the height. Press enter when you're happy with the size. Now it's in there. And if you don't want to see that bounding box, remember you can uncheck this Show Transform controls. This is a path selection tool. I want to do a separate demo on that one as well. This is a rectangle tool, which also creates these other shapes as well. But just for fun, let's do the rectangle tool. Okay, and whatever is going on in your swatches here, I'm going to double click this. It's going to create a box of that color. At least I thought it would. Oh, it's right here. It's right here. Okay, so there's your colors to change in your square. Gradients are nice. Got all kinds of options there, guys. So that is your, what do they call this? What is this? Let's hover over. That's your rectangle tool. But obviously you can do a rounded rectangle, an ellipse, and polygons, and lines, and custom shape. Let's do a custom shape for fun. Whoa, look at that. Okay, so up here I see shapes. Looks like you can do all kinds of weird shapes. Never do I use these, but you can. Okay, so it's just a fast way to get some basic shapes going there. The hand tool. This is what I was telling you earlier that I can move my whole canvas with. If I was backed out a little bit, let's see. Let's see what's going on here. Not sure why my hand tool is not working as it should. Oh, you can rotate the view too. So as you hit rotate, it'll, let's say I hit in 45. That'll rotate the whole thing. I don't really know why you would want to do that, unless you were actually wanted to draw. I don't know. There might be a reason why you want to do that. You can decide that for yourself. So the hand tool. Why is that hand tool not working now? That's really weird. It was working a second ago. So you can hit spacebar also, but this one is where it moves the whole canvas, like everything. So I can hit spacebar to do that. Why it's not moving, I don't know. I don't know. Something's wrong. Something's not right. I don't know. Okay, so we went from the top to the bottom on these tools, and you're gonna really have to mess with it. And you know, as I teach you Photoshop, I'm gonna go through these tools tons of times, but this is just a basic understanding of how they work. And so once you get these figured out, you'll pretty much be able to just be off and running. But again, I'm going to do several demos and tutorials, and by the end of this, you're going to be like whipping through these tools like no big deal. All right, get ready for the next demo. We'll get it going.